Question 1. Strategic planning requires a comprehensive approach to process optimization. Considering the operational complexities of a large retail environment, which of the following best describes an effective strategy for identifying and implementing process improvements? Option A. Implement changes based on the most frequently heard complaints from customers, without detailed analysis of the underlying operational causes. Option B. Make immediate, sweeping changes to established procedures based on a manager's intuition about potential inefficiencies. Option C. Systematically analyze current workflows by observing operations, gathering feedback from frontline staff, and using data to identify bottlenecks, then pilot test targeted solutions before full implementation. Option D. Focus primarily on reducing labor costs by automating tasks, even if it means a significant reduction in direct customer interaction. The correct answer is C. Systematically analyze current workflows by observing operations, gathering feedback from frontline staff, and using data to identify bottlenecks, then pilot test targeted solutions before full implementation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because implementing process optimization within a large retail organization like Loblaw companies involves balancing efficiency gains with potential impacts on employee roles, customer experience, and adherence to operational standards. Careful judgment is required to ensure that optimization efforts do not inadvertently lead to compliance issues or a decline in service quality, which could have significant reputational and financial consequences. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, data-driven methodology that involves all relevant stakeholders. This aligns with principles of good governance and operational excellence. By focusing on identifying bottlenecks through observation and feedback, and then implementing targeted, measurable changes, the process is more likely to achieve sustainable improvements without disrupting core business functions or violating any implicit or explicit operational guidelines. This methodical approach ensures that changes are well understood, tested, and aligned with strategic objectives. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves making changes based solely on anecdotal evidence or assumptions without rigorous data collection. This can lead to inefficient or even detrimental changes that do not address the root cause of any perceived issues and may introduce new problems. It fails to uphold a professional standard of evidence-based decision-making. Another incorrect approach is to implement changes without consulting or informing the employees directly involved in the processes. This can lead to resistance, decreased morale, and a lack of buy-in, undermining the success of the optimization effort. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of respect for the workforce and can create an environment of distrust. A third incorrect approach is to focus on cost reduction as the sole driver of process optimization, without considering the impact on quality, safety, or customer satisfaction. This can lead to a short-sighted approach that may compromise the long-term viability and reputation of the organization. It fails to consider the broader ethical and operational implications beyond immediate financial gains. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach process optimization by first establishing clear objectives aligned with organizational goals. This involves a thorough understanding of current processes, identifying key performance indicators, KPI, and gathering data to pinpoint areas for improvement. Engaging stakeholders, including frontline employees, is crucial for gaining insights and ensuring buy-in. Pilot testing proposed changes and continuously monitoring their impact are essential steps before full-scale implementation. A commitment to continuous improvement, informed by data and feedback, is the hallmark of effective process optimization. Question 2. The assessment process reveals that a particular in-store bakery department is experiencing longer than average customer wait times during peak hours. Management is keen to implement changes to improve efficiency. Which of the following approaches best aligns with responsible and effective process optimization within Loblaw's operational framework? Option A. Prioritize rapid implementation of any proposed changes, focusing on speed over thorough evaluation to quickly address the wait time issue. Option B. Implement a new ordering system based on a single supervisor's suggestion without consulting other team members or analyzing current bottlenecks. Option C. Conduct a pilot program in a few select stores to test new workflow procedures and staffing adjustments, gathering data on wait times, customer feedback, and product quality before a wider rollout. Option D. Immediately reduce the number of staff scheduled during peak hours, assuming that streamlining tasks will compensate for fewer personnel. Correct answer is C. Conduct a pilot program in a few select stores to test new workflow procedures and staffing adjustments, gathering data on wait times, customer feedback, and product quality before a wider rollout. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in retail operations where efficiency improvements are sought. The professional challenge lies in balancing the desire for increased speed and reduced costs with the imperative to maintain high standards of product quality, customer service, and adherence to Loblaw's internal policies and relevant food safety regulations. A hasty or poorly considered optimization can lead to unintended negative consequences, impacting customer trust and potentially leading to regulatory noncompliance. Correct approach analysis. Implementing a phased pilot program for process optimization represents best professional practice. This approach allows for controlled testing of changes in a limited environment before a full-scale rollout. It enables the identification and mitigation of unforeseen issues, gathering of real-world data on effectiveness, and provides an opportunity for staff training and feedback. This aligns with a responsible and risk-averse approach to operational change, which is implicitly supported by general business best practices and the need for continuous improvement within a regulated industry like food retail. While specific Loblaw policies would guide this, the principle of iterative testing is universally sound. Incorrect approaches analysis, focusing solely on reducing staffing levels without a thorough analysis of the impact on service speed and quality, is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This can lead to understaffing, increased wait times, and a decline in customer satisfaction, potentially violating customer service standards. Furthermore, if reduced staffing compromises food handling procedures or safety checks, it could lead to breaches of food safety regulations. Implementing changes based on anecdotal evidence or a single manager's opinion, without objective data or a structured evaluation, is professionally unsound. This approach lacks the rigor required for effective process optimization and risks introducing inefficiencies or compliance issues that were not anticipated. It bypasses the due diligence necessary to ensure changes are beneficial and sustainable, potentially leading to operational disruptions or a failure to meet performance targets. Adopting a move fast and break things mentality, prioritizing speed of implementation over careful planning and risk assessment, is highly inappropriate in a food retail environment. This approach disregards the potential for errors that could impact product integrity, customer safety, and regulatory compliance. It demonstrates a lack of understanding of the critical nature of food handling and customer service, and could lead to serious breaches of food safety laws and damage to Loblaw's reputation. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach process optimization with a structured, data-driven methodology. This involves clearly defining the problem, setting measurable objectives, identifying potential solutions, evaluating their feasibility and impact, including regulatory and ethical considerations, piloting promising solutions, and then implementing and monitoring the chosen approach. Continuous feedback loops and a willingness to adapt based on results are crucial for sustained success. Question 3. Strategic planning requires a systematic approach to process optimization within Loblaw companies. Considering the paramount importance of food safety and product quality, which of the following strategies best balances efficiency gains with regulatory compliance and operational integrity? Option A. Conduct a pilot program in select stores to test and refine new processes before a full-scale rollout, incorporating employee feedback and safety assessments. Option B. Implement changes across all stores simultaneously after initial planning, focusing primarily on cost reduction. Option C. Prioritize speed of implementation to gain a competitive advantage, assuming existing procedures are adequate. Option D. Introduce changes incrementally without formal testing, relying on store managers to adapt as needed. Correct answer is B. Implement changes across all stores simultaneously after initial planning, focusing primarily on cost reduction. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in retail operations where efficiency gains are sought through process optimization. The professional challenge lies in balancing the desire for improved productivity and cost reduction with the imperative to maintain high standards of food safety, product quality, and employee well-being, all within the strict regulatory framework governing food handling and retail operations in Canada, as overseen by bodies like the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, CFIA, and provincial health authorities. Failure to consider these aspects can lead to significant legal repercussions, reputational damage, and harm to consumers. Correct approach analysis. Implementing a phased rollout of process changes, starting with a pilot program in a controlled environment, represents best professional practice. This approach allows for thorough testing and validation of new procedures, identification of unforeseen issues, and refinement of training protocols before widespread implementation. It aligns with the principles of due diligence required by food safety regulations, ensuring that all changes are assessed for their impact on product integrity and consumer safety. This method also facilitates better change management, allowing employees to adapt gradually and provide feedback, thereby minimizing disruption and fostering a culture of continuous improvement as encouraged by best practice in operational management. Incorrect approaches analysis. Adopting a Big Bang approach, where all changes are implemented simultaneously across all stores without prior testing, is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This method bypasses essential risk assessment and validation steps, increasing the likelihood of widespread errors that could compromise food safety standards, leading to potential violations of the CFIA regulations and provincial health codes. It also demonstrates a lack of consideration for employee training and adaptation, potentially leading to increased errors and reduced morale, which is ethically questionable. Focusing solely on cost reduction, without evaluating the impact on product quality or safety, is another critical failure. Regulatory bodies like the CFIA mandate adherence to specific standards for food handling, storage, and preparation. Any process change that inadvertently lowers these standards, even if it reduces costs, is a direct contravention of these regulations and poses a risk to public health. Ethically, prioritizing profit over consumer safety is unacceptable. Ignoring employee feedback and concerns during the optimization process is also professionally unsound. While not always a direct regulatory violation, it fosters a negative work environment and can mask critical operational flaws that might have safety or quality implications. Best practices in operational management emphasize the importance of employee input for identifying practical challenges and ensuring successful implementation. A disregard for this can indirectly lead to noncompliance if employee concerns relate to safety or quality issues. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured, risk-based approach to process optimization. This involves 1. Clearly defining the objectives of the optimization, ensuring they are aligned with both business goals and regulatory requirements. 2. Conducting a thorough impact assessment, considering food safety, product quality, employee well-being, and customer experience. 3. Developing a phased implementation plan, including pilot testing and data collection. 4. Establishing clear communication channels with all stakeholders, especially employees, to gather feedback and address concerns. 5. Continuously monitoring and evaluating the effectiveness of the optimized processes against predefined metrics and regulatory standards. Question 4. Market research demonstrates that Loblaw's current in-store inventory management system for fresh produce is experiencing higher than average spoilage rates and occasional stockouts, impacting both profitability and customer satisfaction. Considering these findings, which of the following approaches to optimizing this process is most aligned with best professional practices for a large retail organization like Loblaw? Option A. Immediately implement a new, advanced inventory tracking software across all Loblaw stores nationwide, based on a competitor's successful adoption of similar technology. Option B. Replace the current inventory management system with a completely new, untested system developed internally, prioritizing speed of implementation over thorough validation. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive diagnostic of the current produce inventory process, including detailed data collection on spoilage, turnover, and stock levels, followed by a pilot program of revised procedures in a select group of stores to assess effectiveness before a broader rollout. Option D. Focus exclusively on reducing the quantity of produce ordered to minimize holding costs, without altering existing stock rotation or ordering frequency. The correct answer is A. Immediately implement a new, advanced inventory tracking software across all Loblaw stores nationwide, based on a competitor's successful adoption of similar technology. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in retail operations where a perceived inefficiency in a core process, such as inventory management, needs to be addressed. The professional challenge lies in balancing the desire for improved efficiency and cost savings with the need to maintain operational integrity, customer satisfaction, and compliance with Loblaw's internal policies and relevant retail regulations. A hasty or poorly considered change could lead to stockouts, increased waste, or even compromise food safety standards, all of which have significant financial and reputational consequences. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that is both effective and responsible. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased implementation of process optimization, starting with a thorough diagnostic phase. This includes detailed data collection on current inventory turnover rates, spoilage, stock levels, and associated costs. Following this, a pilot program in a limited number of stores allows for testing the proposed changes in a controlled environment. This iterative approach, incorporating feedback and adjustments based on pilot results, is best professional practice because it minimizes risk. It aligns with principles of responsible business management by ensuring that changes are data-driven, validated, and have a demonstrable positive impact before widespread adoption. This methodical process also allows for proactive identification and mitigation of potential regulatory or operational issues, such as ensuring that new stock rotation methods do not inadvertently violate food safety guidelines or Loblaw's specific product handling protocols. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a new inventory management system across all stores simultaneously without prior testing is professionally unacceptable. This approach ignores the fundamental principle of risk management in process optimization. It creates a high probability of widespread disruption, potentially leading to significant financial losses due to stockouts or overstocking, and could negatively impact customer experience. From a regulatory and ethical standpoint, such a broad, untested rollout could lead to unintentional noncompliance with Loblaw's internal operational standards and potentially with food safety regulations if stock rotation is compromised. Adopting a competitor's inventory system without understanding its suitability for Loblaw's unique operational context is also professionally unsound. Competitor analysis is valuable. Direct replication without due diligence is a flawed strategy. It fails to account for differences in store size, product mix, supplier relationships, and existing technological infrastructure. This can lead to a system that is either incompatible, inefficient, or fails to meet Loblaw's specific needs, resulting in wasted resources and potential operational breakdowns. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of independent critical thinking and due diligence. Focusing solely on reducing inventory holding costs without considering the impact on product availability and freshness is an incomplete optimization strategy. While cost reduction is a key objective, it must be balanced with service levels and product quality. An approach that prioritizes cost above all else could lead to increased stockouts, lost sales, and a decline in customer satisfaction, ultimately harming the business. It also risks compromising Loblaw's commitment to providing fresh, high-quality products, which is a core ethical and brand promise. Professional reasoning. Professionals tasked with process optimization should adopt a structured, data-driven, and iterative approach. This involves 1. Understanding the current state. Thoroughly analyze existing processes, identify pain points, and gather relevant data. 2. Defining objectives. Clearly articulate what the optimization aims to achieve, ensuring alignment with business goals and regulatory requirements. 3. Developing solutions. Brainstorm and evaluate potential solutions, considering feasibility, impact, and risks. 4. Piloting and testing. Implement proposed changes on a small scale to validate effectiveness and identify unforeseen issues. 5. Iterative refinement. Use feedback and data from the pilot to adjust and improve the solution. 6. Scaled implementation. Roll out the refined solution across the organization, with ongoing monitoring and evaluation. This systematic process ensures that changes are well considered, minimize disruption, and deliver sustainable improvements while upholding ethical standards and regulatory compliance. Question 5. Governance review demonstrates that current inventory management processes at Loblaw stores are leading to inefficiencies and potential stockouts. To address this, a proposal has been put forth to implement a new, highly automated system that significantly alters stock replenishment procedures and requires extensive retraining of store associates. What is the most prudent approach to optimizing these processes? Option A. Implement the new system based on the vendor's recommendations without extensive internal testing or employee consultation. Option B. Prioritize cost savings by reducing the number of staff involved in inventory management, assuming the new system will compensate. Option C. Immediately implement the new automated system across all stores to realize efficiency gains as quickly as possible. Option D. Initiate a pilot program in a select number of stores to test the new system and gather feedback before a full rollout. Correct answer is D. Initiate a pilot program in a select number of stores to test the new system and gather feedback before a full rollout. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in process optimization within a retail environment like Loblaw. The core difficulty lies in balancing the desire for efficiency gains with the potential impact on employee morale and customer experience. A hasty or poorly communicated implementation of process changes can lead to resistance, errors, and a decline in service quality, all of which can have significant financial and reputational consequences. The need for a structured, data-driven, and inclusive approach is paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a phased implementation, starting with a pilot program. This allows for real-world testing of the optimized processes in a controlled environment. It provides an opportunity to gather feedback from frontline staff and customers, identify unforeseen issues, and make necessary adjustments before a full-scale rollout. This iterative process aligns with best practices in change management and process improvement, minimizing disruption and maximizing the likelihood of successful adoption. It also demonstrates a commitment to employee involvement, fostering a sense of ownership and reducing potential resistance. This approach is ethically sound as it respects the impact on employees and customers. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing changes without a pilot program and relying solely on theoretical efficiency gains is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It disregards the practical realities of store operations and the human element involved. This approach risks alienating employees, leading to decreased productivity and potential breaches of workplace standards if processes become unmanageable. It also fails to consider the customer impact, potentially leading to service disruptions and dissatisfaction, which could have implications under consumer protection guidelines. Focusing exclusively on cost reduction without considering the impact on service quality or employee workload is another critical failure. While cost efficiency is important, it cannot come at the expense of operational integrity or employee well-being. This can lead to understaffing, increased stress on employees, and a decline in customer service, potentially violating labor laws or industry standards related to fair working conditions and customer care. Ignoring employee feedback and implementing changes top-down demonstrates a lack of respect for the workforce and a failure to leverage valuable operational insights. This can lead to resentment, decreased morale, and a higher likelihood of errors and non-compliance with new procedures. Ethically, it fails to uphold principles of fairness and employee engagement. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach process optimization with a framework that prioritizes data collection, stakeholder engagement, and iterative implementation. This involves clearly defining the problem, identifying potential solutions, and rigorously testing those solutions in a controlled manner. Seeking input from those directly involved in the processes, employees, and those who benefit from them, customers, is crucial. A phased approach, starting with pilots, allows for continuous learning and adaptation, ensuring that optimizations are both effective and sustainable, while adhering to ethical and regulatory obligations. Question 6. The evaluation methodology shows a proposal to streamline the hiring process by reducing the number of assessment stages and relying more heavily on automated screening tools. Which of the following represents the most professionally sound approach to evaluating this proposal? Option A. Implement the changes and then gather feedback from a select group of senior managers to gauge their satisfaction with the new process. Option B. Prove the proposal based on the assumption that fewer stages and more automation will inherently lead to a better and faster hiring process. Option C. Conduct a pilot program to test the streamlined process with a representative sample of candidates and assess its impact on hiring quality, candidate experience, and operational efficiency, while gathering feedback from hiring managers and candidates. Option D. Immediately implement the proposed changes across all hiring processes to realize potential cost savings and efficiency gains as quickly as possible. The correct answer is C. Conduct a pilot program to test the streamlined process with a representative sample of candidates and assess its impact on hiring quality, candidate experience, and operational efficiency, while gathering feedback from hiring managers and candidates. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in retail operations, balancing efficiency gains with potential impacts on customer experience and employee well-being, all within the context of Loblaw's operational guidelines and relevant Canadian retail sector regulations. The professional challenge lies in identifying process improvements that are not only cost-effective, but also sustainable and compliant. Careful judgment is required to avoid unintended negative consequences. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a holistic review of the proposed changes. This involves a thorough assessment of the impact on key performance indicators, KPI, such as customer wait times, product availability, and employee workload. Furthermore, it necessitates consultation with frontline staff, who possess invaluable insights into the practical implications of process changes. This aligns with Loblaw's commitment to operational excellence and customer satisfaction, and implicitly with general principles of good business practice that emphasize stakeholder engagement and data-driven decision-making. While specific regulations for process optimization in hiring assessments are not explicitly detailed in a public hiring test syllabus, the underlying principles of fairness, efficiency, and responsible business conduct are paramount. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on reducing the number of interview stages without considering the impact on candidate assessment quality is professionally unacceptable. This could lead to a less thorough evaluation of candidates, potentially resulting in suboptimal hiring decisions. From an ethical standpoint, it could also be perceived as devaluing the candidate experience, which can negatively affect Loblaw's employer brand. Another incorrect approach that involves implementing changes based on anecdotal evidence from a small group of managers, without broader data collection or validation, is professionally flawed. This lacks the rigor expected in operational decision-making and risks implementing changes that are not universally beneficial or may even be detrimental. It bypasses the systematic data analysis that underpins effective process optimization. Finally, an approach that disregards feedback from current employees regarding potential workflow disruptions is also professionally unsound. Ignoring the practical realities faced by those executing the processes can lead to resistance, decreased morale, and ultimately, the failure of the implemented changes. Best professional practice dictates a consultative and evidence-based approach, ensuring that process changes are well understood, accepted, and effective across the organization. The professional reasoning process should involve defining the problem, gathering data, analyzing options, implementing solutions, and monitoring results, always with a consideration for all relevant stakeholders and operational objectives. Question 7. The control framework reveals a critical supplier is experiencing production issues and has indicated a potential deviation from standard quality specifications for an upcoming shipment. This supplier is essential for meeting current high consumer demand. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure compliance with Loblaw's operational standards and relevant Canadian food safety regulations? Option A. Conduct a thorough review of the supplier's compliance with Loblaw's quality assurance protocols and relevant Canadian food safety regulations before accepting any product. Option B. Prioritize the financial impact of rejecting the shipment over potential quality and regulatory concerns. Option C. Immediately escalate the issue to senior management without an initial assessment of the supplier's adherence to standards. Option D. Accept the shipment as is to meet immediate demand and address any quality concerns after delivery. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough review of the supplier's compliance with Loblaw's quality assurance protocols and relevant Canadian food safety regulations before accepting any product. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate financial pressures of a key supplier with the long-term integrity of Loblaw's supply chain and its commitment to ethical sourcing. The pressure to accept a substandard product from a critical supplier, especially during a period of high demand, can create a conflict between operational expediency and adherence to established quality and ethical standards. The decision-maker must navigate potential reputational damage, regulatory noncompliance, and the risk of future supply chain disruptions if quality compromises become systemic. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach, which involves a thorough review of the supplier's compliance with Loblaw's quality assurance protocols and relevant Canadian food safety regulations, such as those under the Food and Drugs Act and the Safe Food for Canadians Act, represents best professional practice. This approach prioritizes the safety and quality of products reaching consumers, which is a fundamental ethical and regulatory obligation for a food retailer like Loblaw. It upholds the company's commitment to its stakeholders, including customers, employees, and shareholders, by ensuring that products meet established standards and that the supply chain operates responsibly. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of product recalls, regulatory penalties, and damage to Loblaw's brand reputation. Incorrect approaches analysis. Accepting the shipment without further verification, despite the supplier's stated issues, would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This bypasses established quality control procedures mandated by Canadian food safety legislation, potentially exposing consumers to unsafe products and leading to severe penalties under the Safe Food for Canadians Act. It also undermines Loblaw's ethical commitment to providing safe and high-quality food. Escalating the issue immediately to senior management, without attempting an initial assessment of the supplier's compliance with Loblaw's internal quality standards and relevant regulations, would be inefficient and potentially unnecessary. While escalation is important, it should be based on a preliminary understanding of the situation, not as a first step. This approach fails to demonstrate due diligence in assessing the immediate risks and potential solutions within the established control framework. Focusing solely on the financial implications of rejecting the shipment, without adequately considering the product quality and regulatory compliance aspects, represents a failure to prioritize consumer safety and regulatory adherence. This narrow focus could lead to decisions that are financially short-sighted in the long run due to potential recalls, fines, and reputational damage, violating the ethical duty to operate responsibly. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a dilemma should employ a structured decision-making process. First, they must clearly identify the core issue, a potential compromise in product quality and supplier compliance. Second, they should consult and apply relevant internal policies, Loblaw's quality assurance protocols, and external regulations, Canadian food safety laws. Third, they should gather objective information to assess the extent of the deviation from standards. Fourth, they should evaluate the risks and benefits of different courses of action, prioritizing consumer safety and regulatory compliance. Finally, they should document their decision-making process and the rationale behind their chosen course of action, ensuring transparency and accountability. Question 8. Market research demonstrates that a significant portion of consumers are increasingly concerned about the ethical sourcing of products and the environmental impact of business operations. Loblaw Companies is considering a strategic shift to reduce its reliance on certain suppliers due to perceived inefficiencies, which may lead to job losses in some communities and a reduction in the variety of products offered to consumers. From a stakeholder perspective, what is the most professionally responsible approach for Loblaw to manage this transition? Option A. Publicly announce the planned supplier changes as a necessary step for business optimization, without detailing the specific impacts on employees or communities, to avoid creating undue public concern or negative sentiment. Option B. Proactively engage with affected employees, suppliers, and community representatives to communicate the rationale for the changes, explore mitigation strategies for job losses, and seek input on alternative product sourcing or support programs, while also transparently informing consumers about the evolving product offerings and the company's commitment to responsible sourcing. Option C. Implement the supplier changes immediately to achieve cost efficiencies, and then address any employee or community concerns on a reactive basis as they arise, focusing primarily on legal compliance regarding severance and notice periods. Option D. Prioritize the financial benefits of the supplier changes and focus all communication efforts on highlighting the potential cost savings and improved shareholder returns, assuming that market forces will naturally resolve any stakeholder issues. Correct answer is B. Proactively engage with affected employees, suppliers, and community representatives to communicate the rationale for the changes, explore mitigation strategies for job losses, and seek input on alternative product sourcing or support programs, while also transparently informing consumers about the evolving product offerings and the company's commitment to responsible sourcing. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between maximizing shareholder value and fulfilling broader stakeholder responsibilities, particularly in the context of a publicly traded company like Loblaw Companies. The need to balance financial performance with ethical considerations and regulatory compliance requires careful judgment. The correct approach, which prioritizes transparent communication and engagement with all relevant stakeholders regarding the proposed changes, represents best professional practice. This aligns with principles of good corporate governance and ethical business conduct, which are increasingly emphasized by regulatory bodies and expected by the public. Specifically, in Canada, where Loblaw operates, corporate social responsibility and stakeholder engagement are not merely optional, but are becoming integral to maintaining a company's social license to operate and its long-term sustainability. While specific legislation may not mandate every aspect of stakeholder engagement, the overarching principles of fairness, transparency, and accountability, often embedded in corporate law and securities regulations, e.g., continuous disclosure obligations, support this approach. Ethical frameworks also strongly advocate for considering the impact of business decisions on all parties affected. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate cost reduction, without considering the impact on employees, suppliers, or the community would be professionally unacceptable. This would likely violate ethical principles of fairness and could lead to reputational damage, decreased employee morale, and potential legal challenges. From a regulatory perspective, while not always explicitly prohibited, such a narrow focus can indirectly lead to breaches of employment standards legislation, consumer protection laws, or even anti-competitive practices if the cost-cutting measures are aggressive. Another incorrect approach that involves misleading stakeholders about the true nature or impact of the changes is a direct ethical and regulatory failure. This constitutes misrepresentation and can lead to severe penalties under securities laws, consumer protection legislation, and general fraud statutes. It erodes trust and can result in significant legal liabilities and reputational damage. A third incorrect approach that involves making decisions unilaterally without any consultation or consideration of stakeholder feedback, even if legally permissible in the short term, is professionally unsound. It ignores the value of diverse perspectives, can lead to unforeseen negative consequences, and fails to build the long-term relationships necessary for sustained business success. This approach can also be seen as a failure to act with due diligence and care, which are fundamental duties of directors and officers under corporate law. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a comprehensive stakeholder analysis to identify all affected parties and their potential interests and concerns. This should be followed by an assessment of the potential impacts of proposed decisions on each stakeholder group. A robust ethical framework should be applied to evaluate the fairness and integrity of the decision. Finally, relevant legal and regulatory requirements must be thoroughly reviewed and adhered to, ensuring that all communications and actions are transparent and compliant. Question 9. Benchmark analysis indicates that Loblaw Companies is considering a significant operational efficiency initiative that could lead to substantial cost savings. However, the proposed changes may impact employee work schedules and benefits. From a stakeholder perspective, which of the following approaches best aligns with responsible corporate practice and long-term business sustainability? Option A. Implement the cost-saving measures with minimal employee consultation, focusing on a swift rollout to capture early financial gains and address any employee concerns reactively. Option B. Focus solely on the operational advantages and cost reductions, believing that any employee dissatisfaction will be a temporary issue that the company can manage through internal communications. Option C. Prioritize the immediate financial benefits of the initiative by implementing the changes directly to maximize shareholder value, assuming employees will adapt to new conditions. Option D. Conduct a thorough assessment of the initiative's potential impact on employees, customers, and suppliers, and engage in open dialogue with employee representatives to collaboratively refine the plan before implementation. The correct answer is C. Prioritize the immediate financial benefits of the initiative by implementing the changes directly to maximize shareholder value, assuming employees will adapt to new conditions. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Loblaw, as a major employer, has a responsibility to its diverse stakeholders, including employees, customers, suppliers, and the community. Balancing the immediate financial pressures of a new initiative with the long-term implications for employee well-being and public perception requires careful judgment. The stakeholder perspective is crucial here, as a decision that benefits one group, e.g., shareholders through cost savings, might negatively impact another, e.g., employees through reduced benefits or customers through perceived lower quality. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes understanding and addressing the concerns of all affected stakeholders. This aligns with principles of corporate social responsibility and ethical business conduct, which are increasingly expected of large corporations like Loblaw. By actively seeking input from employee representatives and considering the impact on customer loyalty and supplier relationships, the company demonstrates a commitment to sustainable and responsible business practices. This proactive engagement can mitigate potential backlash, foster trust, and ultimately lead to a more successful and ethically sound implementation of the new initiative. This approach is implicitly supported by general principles of good corporate governance and stakeholder engagement, which are foundational to maintaining a positive corporate reputation and long-term viability. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach focuses solely on immediate cost reduction without considering the broader impact. This represents a failure to acknowledge the interconnectedness of business operations and stakeholder relationships. Ethically, it can be seen as prioritizing short-term financial gains over the well-being and fair treatment of employees and the potential erosion of customer trust. This approach risks alienating employees, leading to decreased morale and productivity, and potentially damaging the company's brand image. Another incorrect approach involves implementing the change without any consultation, assuming employees will adapt. This demonstrates a lack of respect for the workforce and ignores the potential for valuable insights from those directly affected. It fails to uphold ethical principles of fairness and transparency in decision-making. Such an approach can lead to significant resistance, grievances, and a breakdown in communication, ultimately hindering the initiative's success and creating a negative work environment. A third incorrect approach might involve a superficial consultation that doesn't genuinely consider employee feedback, merely going through the motions. This is disingenuous and can be perceived as manipulative, further eroding trust. It fails to meet the ethical standard of good faith engagement and can lead to resentment and a perception that the company is not acting with integrity. Professional reasoning. Professionals at Loblaw should adopt a stakeholder-centric decision-making process. This involves 1. Identifying all relevant stakeholders for the initiative. 2. Understanding the potential impact of the initiative on each stakeholder group. 3. Actively seeking input and feedback from key stakeholders, particularly employees and their representatives. 4. Evaluating the initiative's potential benefits and drawbacks from multiple stakeholder perspectives. 5. Making a decision that seeks to balance competing interests and minimize negative impacts, while maximizing overall value and upholding ethical standards. 6. Communicating the decision and its rationale transparently to all stakeholders. Question 10. Market research demonstrates that customers are increasingly seeking faster checkout experiences. Loblaw is considering implementing a new self-checkout system in select stores to streamline the process. Which of the following approaches best balances efficiency gains with maintaining operational integrity and customer satisfaction? Option A. Implement the new system across all stores immediately to capture the full benefit of the perceived efficiency. Option B. Rely on the vendor's claims of efficiency and implement the system without extensive internal testing or staff training. Option C. Prioritize the reduction of staffing costs associated with traditional checkouts as the primary driver for implementation. Option D. Conduct a pilot program in a few stores, gathering data on transaction times, error rates, and customer feedback before a wider rollout. The correct answer is D. Conduct a pilot program in a few stores, gathering data on transaction times, error rates, and customer feedback before a wider rollout. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in retail operations where efficiency gains are sought through process optimization. The professional challenge lies in balancing the desire for improved workflow and cost reduction with the imperative to maintain high standards of product quality, customer service, and regulatory compliance, particularly concerning food safety and handling. The pressure to implement changes quickly without thorough evaluation can lead to unintended negative consequences. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and data-driven evaluation of proposed process changes. This includes pilot testing, gathering feedback from frontline staff who directly interact with the processes, and assessing the impact on key performance indicators such as customer wait times, order accuracy, and product integrity. This aligns with best practices in operational management and implicitly with regulatory expectations for safe and efficient food handling, as mandated by relevant Canadian food safety legislation and Loblaw's internal quality assurance guidelines. A phased rollout based on successful pilot results ensures that improvements are sustainable and do not compromise established standards. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing changes based solely on a manager's intuition or anecdotal evidence without empirical testing or staff consultation is professionally unsound. This approach risks overlooking critical operational nuances and potential negative impacts on product quality or customer experience, which could indirectly lead to non-compliance with food safety regulations if product handling is compromised. Adopting a new technology or process without adequate training for staff creates a high risk of errors, inefficiency, and potential safety hazards. This failure to equip employees with the necessary skills is a direct contravention of best practices in change management and can lead to breaches of workplace safety regulations and food handling protocols. Focusing exclusively on cost reduction without considering the impact on service quality or product integrity is a short-sighted strategy. While cost efficiency is important, it should not come at the expense of customer satisfaction or the safety and quality of goods sold, which are fundamental to Loblaw's reputation and regulatory obligations. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach process optimization with a structured methodology. This involves clearly defining the problem or opportunity, brainstorming potential solutions, evaluating these solutions based on feasibility, impact, and alignment with organizational goals and regulatory requirements, piloting promising solutions, and then implementing and monitoring the chosen approach. Continuous feedback loops and a willingness to adapt are crucial for sustained success. Question 11. Quality control measures reveal a potential contamination issue in a popular brand of prepackaged salads sold across Loblaw stores. While the exact source and extent of the contamination are still under investigation, initial findings suggest a possible link to a specific supplier. Store managers are reporting increased customer inquiries about product availability, and there is pressure to maintain sales volume. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for Loblaw companies? Option A. Continue selling the product while intensifying the internal investigation to pinpoint the exact cause of contamination before any public action is taken. Option B. Issue a public notice advising customers to exercise caution when consuming the product while the investigation proceeds, but continue sales. Option C. Focus solely on holding the supplier accountable for the contamination and continue sales to avoid financial losses during the investigation. Option D. Immediately initiate a voluntary product recall for the affected salad brand and commence a comprehensive investigation into the contamination source and scope. The correct answer is D. Immediately initiate a voluntary product recall for the affected salad brand and commence a comprehensive investigation into the contamination source and scope. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for product availability with the long-term implications of potential quality issues and their impact on consumer trust and regulatory compliance. The pressure to meet demand can lead to shortcuts that compromise safety and quality standards, creating a conflict between operational efficiency and ethical/regulatory obligations. Correct approach analysis. Prioritizing immediate product recall and thorough investigation aligns with the highest professional standards and regulatory expectations. This approach demonstrates a commitment to consumer safety and product integrity, which are paramount in the food retail sector. By proactively addressing the issue, Loblaw mitigates potential harm to consumers, avoids more severe regulatory penalties, and preserves its reputation. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and responsible corporate conduct expected under Canadian food safety regulations, such as those enforced by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, CFIA. Correct approach is analysis, focusing solely on identifying the source of the contamination without initiating a recall, fails to adequately protect consumers from immediate risk. This approach prioritizes internal investigation over public safety, which is a direct contravention of food safety laws and ethical responsibilities. It could lead to widespread illness and significant legal and reputational damage. Continuing to sell the product while investigating, even with a disclaimer, is a severe regulatory and ethical failure. Knowingly exposes consumers to a potential health hazard, violating the fundamental duty of care. This action would likely result in severe penalties from regulatory bodies and a catastrophic loss of consumer confidence. Blaming the supplier without taking responsibility for the product on shelves is an abdication of corporate responsibility. While supplier accountability is important, Loblaw, as the retailer, has a primary responsibility to ensure the safety of the products it sells to its customers. This approach ignores Loblaw's own due diligence obligations and could lead to regulatory sanction for failing to adequately vet its supply chain and products. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves identifying potential hazards, assessing their severity and likelihood, and implementing controls to mitigate them. In situations involving potential food safety issues, the default action should always be to err on the side of caution to protect public health. This includes immediate containment measures like recalls, followed by thorough investigation and corrective actions. Transparency with consumers and regulators, and a commitment to continuous improvement in quality control processes are essential components of responsible business practice. Question 12. Process analysis reveals a potential for a new contaminant to affect a key ingredient used in several popular Loblaw private label food products. While the risk is currently assessed as low, the potential impact on consumer health, if the contaminant is present at higher levels, is significant. Management is considering whether to invest in enhanced, more frequent, and costly testing protocols for this ingredient, or to maintain current testing levels and monitor for consumer complaints. From a stakeholder perspective, what is the most professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Implement superficial changes to existing testing procedures that appear proactive but do not significantly alter the risk assessment to manage costs. Option B. Invest in enhanced, more frequent, and costly testing protocols for the ingredient to proactively ensure consumer safety and uphold product integrity. Option C. Dismiss the potential contaminant as a low-probability risk and continue with existing testing protocols without further investment, prioritizing immediate cost savings. Option D. Maintain current testing levels and rely on consumer complaints and post-market surveillance to identify any potential issues with the ingredient. The correct answer is B. Invest in enhanced, more frequent and costly testing protocols for the ingredient to proactively ensure consumer safety and uphold product integrity. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing the immediate financial pressures of a business with its long-term ethical and legal obligations to its stakeholders, particularly concerning product safety and consumer trust. Pressure to reduce costs can conflict with the imperative to maintain high standards, creating a difficult decision point for management. Correct approach analysis. Prioritizing the safety and well-being of consumers by investing in enhanced product testing and quality control aligns with the ethical principles of corporate social responsibility and the legal duty of care owed to customers. This approach upholds Loblaw's reputation, fosters long-term customer loyalty, and mitigates the risk of costly recalls, lawsuits, and regulatory penalties. It reflects a commitment to operating with integrity, a core value expected of any responsible business. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to dismiss the concerns about potential product contamination as minor or unlikely, opting to maintain current testing protocols to avoid increased expenditure. This fails to acknowledge the potential severity of the risk and the company's responsibility to proactively ensure product safety. Such a decision could lead to significant regulatory noncompliance if contamination is discovered, potentially resulting in fines, product recalls, and severe damage to brand reputation. Ethically, it prioritizes short-term cost savings over consumer health. Another incorrect approach would be to implement superficial changes to testing procedures that do not genuinely address the identified risks, merely to appear proactive. This is a form of misleading stakeholders and could be considered deceptive. If the underlying issues are not resolved, the risk of contamination remains, and the company could face accusations of misrepresentation and a loss of trust from consumers and regulators. This approach violates principles of transparency and honesty. A third incorrect approach would be to shift the burden of risk entirely onto consumers by not investing in robust testing and relying on post-market surveillance or consumer complaints to identify issues. This is ethically irresponsible and legally precarious. Companies have a duty to ensure their products are safe before they reach the market, not to wait for harm to occur. This approach would likely lead to severe reputational damage and legal repercussions. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach, considering both the likelihood and potential impact of identified risks. When consumer safety is involved, the precautionary principle should guide decision-making, leaning towards more stringent measures even in the face of uncertainty. A thorough stakeholder analysis, considering the impact on consumers, employees, shareholders, and the wider community, is crucial. Adherence to relevant Canadian consumer protection laws and industry best practices for food safety and quality assurance should be paramount. Open communication with regulatory bodies and transparent reporting of any identified risks and mitigation strategies are also essential components of professional conduct. Question 13. Assessment of how an employee should respond when observing a colleague potentially violating Loblaw's policy regarding product handling and inventory management, specifically by placing items in an unauthorized location for later personal retrieval. Option A. Confront the colleague directly about the observed behavior to understand their actions and express concern. Option B. Immediately report the colleague to management based solely on the initial observation, without further investigation or context. Option C. Discreetly gather more information about the observed behavior and report the findings through the appropriate internal channels, such as a direct supervisor or loss prevention. Option D. Ignore the behavior, assuming it is a minor oversight or not the employee's responsibility to address. The correct answer is C. Discreetly gather more information about the observed behavior and report the findings through the appropriate internal channels, such as a direct supervisor or loss prevention. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common ethical dilemma in a retail environment where an employee observes a potential policy violation by a colleague. The challenge lies in balancing loyalty to a peer with the responsibility to uphold company standards and prevent potential losses or reputational damage. The employee must decide whether to report the observed behavior, ignore it, or address it directly, each with potential consequences for themselves, their colleague, and the company. The pressure to conform or avoid conflict can complicate objective decision-making. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves gathering more information discreetly and then reporting the observed behavior through the appropriate channels, such as a direct supervisor or the designated loss prevention department. This aligns with Loblaw's commitment to maintaining a safe, secure, and ethical workplace, as outlined in their Employee Code of Conduct and Operational Policies. By following established reporting procedures, the employee acts responsibly, allowing the company to investigate and address the situation appropriately without making assumptions or taking matters into their own hands. This upholds the principle of accountability and ensures that company policies are consistently applied, protecting both company assets and the integrity of the work environment. Incorrect approaches analysis. Ignoring the behavior is professionally unacceptable because it tacitly condones potential policy violations and could lead to further losses or a breakdown in workplace standards. This failure to act can be interpreted as a lack of integrity and a disregard for the company's operational integrity and financial well-being. It also misses an opportunity to address a potentially escalating issue before it causes significant harm. Confronting the colleague directly without prior investigation or understanding of the full context is also professionally problematic. While it might stem from a desire for direct resolution, it bypasses established company procedures for handling such matters. This could lead to an escalation of conflict, a false accusation if the observation was misinterpreted, or the colleague covering up their actions, making a subsequent investigation more difficult. It also places the employee in a potentially confrontational and unsupported position. Making assumptions about the colleague's intent or the severity of the action without verification is a failure of objective judgment. This can lead to unfair accusations or an overreaction to a minor or misunderstood situation. Professional decision-making requires a commitment to factual assessment rather than subjective interpretation, especially when it impacts another individual's standing or employment. Professional reasoning. Professionals should utilize a structured decision-making framework when faced with ethical dilemmas. This typically involves 1. Identifying the ethical issue and relevant policies/laws. 2. Gathering all relevant facts objectively. 3. Considering the potential consequences of each course of action. 4. Evaluating options against ethical principles and company values. 5. Consulting with appropriate resources, e.g., supervisor, HR, if unsure. 6. Taking the most responsible and ethical action. In this case, the framework guides the employee to seek more information and report through official channels, ensuring a fair and effective resolution. Question 14. Comparative studies suggest that in retail environments, sales associates often face pressure to meet targets. If a customer is inquiring about a product that, while popular, has known minor side effects for a small percentage of users, what is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible approach for the sales associate to take? Option A. Inform the customer about the product's popularity and benefits, highlighting its general effectiveness, and proceed with the sale if the customer expresses interest, without dwelling on the rare side effects. Option B. Clearly explain the product's benefits and then proactively disclose the known minor side effects, advising the customer to consider their individual sensitivities and consult a healthcare professional if they have concerns. Option C. Emphasize the product's high sales volume and positive reviews, suggesting that any potential side effects are negligible and unlikely to affect them. Option D. Recommend a different, less popular product that has no reported side effects, even if it is less aligned with the customer's stated needs, to avoid any potential liability. The correct answer is A. Inform the customer about the product's popularity and benefits, highlighting its general effectiveness, and proceed with the sale if the customer expresses interest, without dwelling on the rare side effects. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing immediate operational needs with long-term ethical considerations and potential regulatory compliance issues. Pressure to meet sales targets can lead to overlooking or downplaying potential risks associated with product recommendations. Careful judgment is required to ensure that customer well-being and regulatory adherence are prioritized over short-term gains. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it aligns with the fundamental ethical duty of care owed to customers and the regulatory obligation to provide accurate and non-misleading information. This approach prioritizes customer needs and safety, ensuring that recommendations are based on a thorough understanding of the product's suitability and potential risks, thereby upholding the integrity of the business and fostering customer trust. This aligns with principles of responsible retailing and consumer protection, which are implicitly or explicitly governed by retail sector guidelines and consumer rights legislation in Canada. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on maximizing sales without considering product suitability or potential customer harm represents a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This could lead to misrepresentation, breach of implied warranties of fitness for purpose, and potential contravention of consumer protection laws that prohibit deceptive or unfair business practices. Another incorrect approach that involves pressuring customers into purchasing products they may not need or fully understand is unethical and could violate fair trading practices. Finally, an approach that involves withholding crucial information about product limitations or risks to secure a sale is deceptive and undermines the principle of informed consent, potentially leading to customer dissatisfaction and legal repercussions. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the core ethical and regulatory principles at play. This involves understanding the customer's needs and circumstances, assessing the suitability of the product, and transparently communicating all relevant information, including potential risks or limitations. When faced with conflicting pressures, such as sales targets versus ethical obligations, professionals should escalate concerns to management or seek guidance to ensure decisions are made in accordance with company policy and legal requirements. The framework should emphasize a commitment to honesty, transparency, and customer welfare as paramount. Question 15. The monitoring system demonstrates a consistent pattern of minor price discrepancies between the shelf price and the scan price for a specific product category. While the financial impact per transaction is negligible, the frequency suggests a systemic issue that could affect customer trust and potentially violate consumer protection principles if left unaddressed. What is the most appropriate initial step to take? Option A. Monitor the system for another week to gather more data before deciding on a course of action, as the current discrepancies are minor. Option B. Instruct store staff to manually override any price discrepancies at the point of sale to ensure customers are charged the lower price, without investigating the cause. Option C. Immediately adjust the shelf prices to match the scan prices to prevent further discrepancies, assuming the scan price is the correct one. Option D. Initiate a comprehensive audit of the pricing system and manual price entry procedures for the affected product category to identify the root cause of the discrepancies. The correct answer is D. Initiate a comprehensive audit of the pricing system and manual price entry procedures for the affected product category to identify the root cause of the discrepancies. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing immediate operational needs with long-term ethical and regulatory compliance. The pressure to meet sales targets can create a temptation to overlook or downplay potential issues, making objective decision-making paramount. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough, evidence-based investigation before making any decisions. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and responsible management, ensuring that actions are taken only after a complete understanding of the situation and its implications. It upholds the integrity of Loblaw's operations and its commitment to fair business practices, which are implicitly expected under general business ethics and consumer protection guidelines relevant to Canadian retail. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate sales performance without investigating the reported discrepancies would be ethically flawed. It risks perpetuating potentially unfair or misleading practices, which could lead to customer dissatisfaction and reputational damage. Furthermore, ignoring such a system alert could be seen as a failure to implement adequate internal controls, a responsibility expected of management in any regulated business environment. Another incorrect approach that involves making assumptions about the cause of the discrepancies without verification is also professionally unacceptable. This bypasses the critical step of gathering facts and can lead to incorrect conclusions and inappropriate actions. It demonstrates a lack of rigor and a failure to apply a systematic decision-making process, potentially leading to further operational or ethical breaches. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured decision-making framework. This typically includes 1. Identifying the problem or alert the monitoring system's demonstration. 2. Gathering all relevant information and facts. 3. Analyzing the information to understand the root cause and potential impacts. 4. Evaluating different courses of action based on their feasibility, ethical implications, and potential consequences. 5. Selecting the best course of action and implementing it. 6. Monitoring the results and making adjustments as needed. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, justifiable, and aligned with professional standards and organizational values. Question 16. To address the challenge of discovering a batch of produce exhibiting unusual discoloration and a slightly off odor, which could indicate a quality issue, what is the most appropriate course of action for a Loblaw employee to take to ensure customer safety and uphold company standards? Option A. Offer a significant discount on the discolored produce to customers as a way to move inventory quickly. Option B. Immediately report the findings to the store manager and the quality assurance department for investigation and potential removal from shelves. Option C. Continue to sell the produce, assuming the discoloration and odor are minor and unlikely to cause harm. Option D. Discreetly remove the affected produce from the display and dispose of it without informing anyone to avoid causing alarm. Correct answer is B. Immediately report the findings to the store manager and the quality assurance department for investigation and potential removal from shelves. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing immediate operational needs with long-term ethical considerations and potential regulatory implications. A Loblaw employee in this context must exercise sound judgment to ensure that decisions align with company policy and relevant Canadian consumer protection laws, even when faced with pressure to resolve an issue quickly. The core of the challenge lies in identifying and mitigating risks associated with product quality and customer trust. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes customer safety and regulatory compliance. By immediately escalating the issue to the appropriate department, quality assurance, and documenting the findings, The employee adheres to established protocols for handling potential product defects. This proactive measure ensures that a thorough investigation can occur, preventing further distribution of potentially compromised products and safeguarding both customer health and Loblaw's reputation. This aligns with the principles of due diligence expected under Canadian consumer protection legislation, which mandates that businesses take reasonable steps to ensure the safety and quality of the products they sell. An incorrect approach that involves simply discarding the affected product without reporting it to a superior or relevant department is ethically and regulatorily flawed. This bypasses established quality control procedures and fails to address the root cause of the problem. It could lead to continued distribution of substandard products, potentially violating the Food and Drugs Act or provincial consumer protection acts, and could result in significant reputational damage and legal repercussions for Loblaw. Another incorrect approach, such as offering a customer a discount on the affected product without investigating its safety or quality, is also problematic. While seemingly a customer service gesture, it fails to address the underlying issue of product integrity. This could expose customers to potential harm and demonstrates a lack of commitment to product safety, which is a fundamental ethical and legal obligation. It also fails to trigger the necessary internal review processes to prevent recurrence. A third incorrect approach, which is to ignore the issue and hope it resolves itself, is the most negligent. This demonstrates a complete disregard for professional responsibility and regulatory obligations. It allows potential risks to persist, potentially leading to widespread customer dissatisfaction, health concerns, and severe legal penalties for the company. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that involves 1. Identifying the problem and its potential impact. 2. Consulting relevant company policies and procedures. 3. Assessing potential risks, customer safety, regulatory, reputational. 4. Escalating the issue to the appropriate authority or department for investigation and resolution. 5. Documenting all actions taken and findings. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, ethical, and compliant with all applicable regulations. Question 17. Cost-benefit analysis shows that sourcing a new product line from a supplier offering significantly lower prices is financially attractive. However, this supplier's claims of ethically sourced materials are based solely on their own internal assessments, and independent verification is not readily available without incurring additional costs and potential delays. Loblaw's internal guidelines emphasize both cost-effectiveness and maintaining customer trust through transparent and ethical practices. Which of the following actions best navigates this decision? Option A. Proceed with the lower-cost supplier, assuming their self-assessment is sufficient to meet ethical sourcing claims and avoid potential regulatory scrutiny. Option B. Negotiate a lower price with the current, verified ethical supplier to offset the potential cost savings from the new supplier. Option C. Engage the lower-cost supplier, but invest in an independent third-party audit to verify their ethical sourcing claims before committing to a large order, accepting a potential delay and increased initial cost. Option D. Reject the lower-cost supplier due to the lack of independent verification, opting for a more expensive supplier with established ethical certifications, even if it impacts profit margins. The correct answer is A. Proceed with the lower-cost supplier, assuming their self-assessment is sufficient to meet ethical sourcing claims and avoid potential regulatory scrutiny. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing immediate cost savings against potential long-term reputational damage and customer trust, which are critical assets for a company like Loblaw. The decision-maker must consider not only the financial implications, but also the ethical and regulatory dimensions of product sourcing and labeling. The core of the challenge lies in the ambiguity of ethically sourced and the potential for misrepresentation. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes transparency and adherence to consumer protection regulations. By seeking independent verification and ensuring clear, accurate labeling, the company upholds its commitment to customers and avoids misleading them. This aligns with the principles of fair trading and consumer rights, which are fundamental in the Canadian retail landscape. Such a proactive stance builds trust and mitigates the risk of regulatory penalties or public backlash. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the lower cost of the unverified supplier fails to consider the significant risks involved. This could lead to a breach of consumer protection laws, if the product is not as represented, potentially resulting in fines and legal action. Furthermore, it disregards the ethical implications of potentially sourcing from suppliers with questionable labor or environmental practices, which can severely damage Loblaw's brand reputation and alienate its customer base. Another incorrect approach that relies on the supplier's self-declaration without due diligence is also professionally unacceptable. While seemingly cost-effective, it outsources the responsibility for ethical sourcing and compliance, which is a failure of corporate governance. This approach opens the door to unknowingly stocking products that do not meet ethical standards or regulatory requirements, leading to the same reputational and legal risks as the first incorrect approach. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a comprehensive framework that includes 1. Identifying all relevant stakeholders and their interests. 2. Gathering all pertinent information, including potential risks and benefits. 3. Evaluating options against established ethical guidelines and regulatory requirements. 4. Consulting with legal and compliance departments. 5. Considering the long-term impact on brand reputation and customer loyalty. 6. Documenting the decision-making process and the rationale behind the chosen course of action. Question 18. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood and high impact for customer confusion regarding the placement of a new premium brand of coffee next to a significantly lower-priced, generic brand. The marketing team is pushing for this placement to leverage the visual proximity for a premium comparison sales tactic, arguing it will boost sales of both products. The compliance department has raised concerns about potential misrepresentation. Which of the following represents the most responsible and effective decision-making approach in this situation? Option A. Implement the proposed placement but instruct store staff to verbally clarify the price difference to every customer who picks up either coffee. Option B. Halt the proposed placement and explore alternative merchandising strategies that do not create a risk of customer confusion, even if it means a potentially lower immediate sales boost. Option C. Proceed with the proposed placement, as the potential sales uplift outweighs the theoretical risk of customer confusion, and the marketing team believes they can manage any customer inquiries. Option D. Defer the decision until a more detailed customer survey can be conducted, which may take several months, to definitively assess the risk of confusion. The correct answer is C. Proceed with the proposed placement, as the potential sales uplift outweighs the theoretical risk of customer confusion, and the marketing team believes they can manage any customer inquiries. Explanation. This scenario presents a professionally challenging situation because it requires balancing immediate operational needs with long-term compliance and ethical considerations. The pressure to meet sales targets can lead to overlooking potential risks, making a structured decision-making framework essential. The core challenge lies in identifying and mitigating risks associated with product placement and promotional activities that could inadvertently mislead customers or violate consumer protection guidelines. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough, data-driven assessment of risks before making a decision. This aligns with the principles of responsible business conduct and regulatory compliance, ensuring that Loblaw's operations are not only profitable, but also ethical and legally sound. By systematically evaluating potential negative outcomes and their likelihood, and then developing mitigation strategies, the company demonstrates a commitment to customer trust and regulatory adherence. This proactive stance minimizes the possibility of future penalties, reputational damage, and customer dissatisfaction. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate sales gains without considering the potential for customer confusion or misrepresentation would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could violate consumer protection laws that mandate clear and accurate product information. Another incorrect approach, which involves implementing changes without consulting relevant internal stakeholders, e.g., legal, compliance, marketing, risks overlooking critical compliance requirements or unintended consequences, leading to potential breaches of internal policies and external regulations. A third incorrect approach, relying on anecdotal evidence or personal judgment without objective risk assessment, is inherently unreliable and can lead to decisions that are not in the best interest of the company or its customers, potentially exposing Loblaw to legal challenges and reputational harm. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that involves 1. Clearly defining the problem or decision to be made. 2. Gathering relevant information, including data from the risk matrix and any applicable regulatory guidelines. 3. Identifying and analyzing potential risks and benefits associated with different courses of action. 4. Evaluating the likelihood and impact of each risk. 5. Developing and assessing mitigation strategies. 6. Selecting the best course of action based on the analysis. And 7. Monitoring the outcome and making adjustments as needed. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are well-informed, defensible, and aligned with ethical and regulatory standards. Question 19. Risk assessment procedures indicate that the planned expansion of Loblaw's customer loyalty program involves collecting enhanced personal data, including purchase history, online browsing habits, and demographic information, to personalize offers. Which of the following actions is the most appropriate and compliant approach to manage the associated privacy risks before the program's full implementation? Option A. Prioritize the marketing benefits of personalized offers and assume customer consent covers all data usage for program enhancement. Option B. Proceed with the program launch and address any privacy concerns that arise after customers begin participating. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive data protection impact assessment (DPIA) to identify and mitigate potential privacy risks before launch. Option D. Rely on existing general IT security policies to safeguard the new customer data, assuming they are sufficient. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive data protection impact assessment (DPIA) to identify and mitigate potential privacy risks before launch. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge because Loblaw, as a major retailer, operates within a complex regulatory environment that mandates robust data privacy and security measures. The introduction of a new customer loyalty program, while offering business benefits, inherently increases the volume and sensitivity of personal data collected. The challenge lies in balancing the program's objectives with the legal and ethical obligations to protect customer information from unauthorized access, use, or disclosure. A failure to adequately assess and mitigate these risks could lead to significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust, all of which are critical for a company like Loblaw. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves conducting a comprehensive data protection impact assessment (DPIA) prior to the full rollout of the new loyalty program. This aligns with the principles of privacy by design and by default, as mandated by various data protection regulations, e.g., PIPTA in Canada, which is highly relevant to Loblaw's operations. A DPIA systematically identifies potential privacy risks associated with the data processing activities of the loyalty program, such as the types of data collected, how it will be stored, used, shared, and retained, and the potential impact on individuals. It then requires the implementation of appropriate technical and organizational measures to mitigate these identified risks. This proactive approach ensures compliance with legal obligations, demonstrates a commitment to customer privacy, and builds trust, which is essential for the long-term success of the loyalty program and Loblaw's brand. Incorrect approaches analysis. Proceeding with the program launch without a formal risk assessment, relying solely on existing general IT security policies, is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. General policies may not adequately address the specific risks introduced by a new data-intensive program, leading to potential noncompliance with data protection laws that require specific assessments for new processing activities. This approach demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the principle of accountability. Implementing the program and then addressing any identified privacy issues reactively, only if a breach occurs, is also a critical failure. This reactive stance violates the proactive requirements of data protection legislation, which emphasizes preventing harm before it occurs. It exposes Loblaw to substantial legal liabilities, fines, and reputational damage, as it indicates a failure to implement appropriate safeguards from the outset. Focusing solely on the marketing benefits of the loyalty program and assuming that customer consent automatically covers all data uses, without a thorough assessment of the data processing activities and potential risks, is an ethical and regulatory misstep. Consent must be informed and specific, and a broad assumption of consent, without a detailed understanding of data handling practices, can lead to breaches of privacy and trust. This approach neglects the fundamental rights of individuals regarding their personal information. Professional reasoning. Professionals at Loblaw should adopt a risk-based approach to data privacy. This involves 1. identifying all data processing activities associated with the new program. 2. Understanding the types of personal data involved and their sensitivity. 3. Evaluating the potential risks to individuals' privacy, considering the likelihood and severity of harm. 4. Implementing appropriate technical and organizational measures to mitigate identified risks. 5. Documenting the assessment process and the measures taken. 6. Regularly reviewing and updating the assessment as the program evolves or new risks emerge. This systematic process ensures that privacy is integrated into the design and operation of the loyalty program, aligning with legal requirements and ethical best practices. Question 20. Consider a scenario where Loblaw Companies is planning to introduce a new line of private label cleaning products. Before proceeding with full-scale production and distribution, what is the most appropriate approach to assess the potential impacts of this new product line? Option A. Prioritize speed to market by fast-tracking the product development process and addressing any potential issues only if they arise during initial sales. Option B. Focus exclusively on the cost-effectiveness of sourcing raw materials and manufacturing processes, assuming that regulatory compliance will be handled by the suppliers. Option C. Undertake a limited assessment based on readily available market research, without consulting with internal sustainability or product safety teams. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive environmental and health impact assessment, engaging relevant internal departments and external experts to identify potential risks and develop mitigation strategies throughout the product lifecycle. Correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive environmental and health impact assessment, engaging relevant internal departments and external experts to identify potential risks and develop mitigation strategies throughout the product lifecycle. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Loblaw Companies, as a major retailer, operates within a complex regulatory environment that mandates responsible sourcing and supply chain management. The introduction of a new product line requires a thorough impact assessment to ensure compliance with all applicable laws and ethical considerations, particularly concerning environmental sustainability and consumer safety. A failure to conduct a comprehensive assessment could lead to significant reputational damage, legal penalties, and disruption to operations. The correct approach involves proactively identifying and evaluating potential negative impacts of the new product line on the environment and consumer health throughout its life cycle, from sourcing to disposal. This aligns with the principles of corporate social responsibility and regulatory expectations for due diligence in product development and supply chain management. By engaging stakeholders and considering mitigation strategies early, Loblaw can demonstrate a commitment to sustainable practices and consumer well-being, thereby upholding its legal and ethical obligations. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost-effectiveness without considering environmental or health impacts would be professionally unacceptable. This would violate principles of responsible business conduct and potentially contravene regulations related to product safety and environmental protection. Another incorrect approach that neglects to consult with relevant internal departments and external experts would lead to an incomplete and potentially flawed assessment, increasing the risk of unforeseen negative consequences and noncompliance. Finally, an approach that prioritizes speed to market over a thorough impact assessment would demonstrate a disregard for due diligence, potentially exposing Loblaw to significant risks and failing to meet its ethical and legal responsibilities. Professionals should adopt a systematic decision-making process that begins with understanding the scope of the project and its potential touchpoints with regulatory frameworks and ethical consideration. This involves identifying all relevant stakeholders, gathering information from diverse sources, and employing a structured methodology for impact assessment. The process should include risk identification, evaluation, and the development of mitigation plans, ensuring that all decisions are grounded in a comprehensive understanding of potential consequences and aligned with best practices in corporate governance and sustainability.